I'm talking.
They should automatically tweet.
Welcome into Rise to the Victors. We are talking about Michigan State this week. I'm Brandon Justice, joined by Josh Henschke, Davis Mosley, Zach Libby, and Brock Heilig, the Maize Blue review crew. And we're talking to you today about a pretty huge game, regardless of the records, right? This is one that you circle. Every year, Michigan has what we all believe to be three games that stand out annually, and that's that's Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State. And even though Michigan State is not good this year, and they've struggled, they got a win over a Wisconsin team that bounced back the next week and had a nice win over Purdue, pretty much dominated Purdue. And Michigan State's certainly not good, but we've seen Michigan State teams who are inferior to Michigan come into the big house and beat Michigan. We've seen them beat them on the road. So it is still going to be very much so a rivalry game, and we will talk about all of it today. We'll also be previewing it on michigan.rivals.com throughout the week, so make sure you guys come and join us and sign up today for a subscription. You get all kinds of stuff with your subscription, from inside intel on every team, football, basketball, recruiting on both sides there, even baseball, and the list goes on. And then you're going to get all kinds of breakdowns and film analysis and this, that, and the other thing, advanced analytical posts, feature stories. We really do a lot, and we would love to have you at michigan.rivals.com. So come join us today. With all that out of the way, it's time to talk ball. Huge football game on Saturday. It's under the lights. I mean, it's everything you draw up this game to be, outside of you wish Michigan State was maybe a better team going in as far as like a pageantry thing goes. But outside of that, under the lights at the big house, Michigan State. This is apparently there's a blue out. And this is like what this game is meant to be, how it's meant to be played, the environment it should be in. And I know a lot of people argue that, tradition with noon games and 3:30 games, which I prefer. But from a fandom perspective, from a college football perspective, everyone's going to be ending their night on Saturday watching Michigan and Michigan State under the lights at the big house, which doesn't happen often. We saw it happen earlier this year. Is this the first time that there's been two night games in a season? Has that happened before? I feel like it has happened before. I feel like it has, but it hasn't been able to happen very much. We don't see many night games at Michigan Stadium in comparison to other schools. Starting to see it pretty much even with others, but it's been a slow burn for the administration to start scheduling these night games. So here we are. The bye week's over. The boredom is over. Everyone can take a deep sigh. It's time to talk football. So let's do exactly that. And we'll start where we always start, and that's with Josh. And we're talking about storylines here. So, what are your biggest storylines going into this game? Just give me one for Michigan and one for Michigan State.
Well, I think the biggest storyline for Michigan is, that 0-2, thing that's hanging over Jim Harbaugh's head against Mel Tucker. I think that's the big one. And this year has got to be the year that you got to get over that hump. I mean, if you're really truly a college football playoff contender that a lot of people think that you are, and that even Michigan thinks themselves, you got to win this game. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, fortunately, last year, we saw that they didn't have to beat Michigan State to win the Big Ten, but I think Michigan has higher goals this year, and with the way college football playoffs shaping out, one loss might not necessarily get you in. So, the big one for Michigan is obviously getting over that Michigan State hump. 0-2 against Mel Tucker. Two inexplicable losses to Mel Tucker, too, by the way. It's not like Michigan State thoroughly beat them. I mean, it's, two very inexplicable losses that just, didn't make sense on paper. But, and I guess for Michigan State, the big storyline is to, if they can stop J.J. McCarthy in the passing attack, because they're going to sell out for the run game. I mean, they're going to give up everything to stop the run, because that's Michigan's bread and butter. But can J.J. McCarthy beat you with his arm? And I think he's shown that he can. And Michigan State's passing defense is pretty atrocious. So, there's an opportunity there for Michigan to kind of take advantage of it. So, it's an intriguing game. You can throw everything out, the previous records, stats, and all that kind of stuff. All crazy things happen when Michigan plays Michigan State. But again, I mean, just the way everything's set up, this is a game that Michigan shouldn't have any issues winning. But for some reason, when it comes to Michigan State, there's always some sort of mystic force that gets in the way that prevents, Michigan playing its ball. It always seems to get away from playing to its core values when they play Michigan State, and that's kind of wild. But yeah, I think those are my two major ones. I mean, like my big takeaways, you got to get over that. You got to get over that Mel Tucker hump. You have to. I mean, if it's not this year, then it's just at this point, it's just embarrassing. If you can't do it this year.
Of course, Michigan is coming off its game over Penn State. Both teams are off of a bye week. Both teams are off of a win, but these two teams have had very different trajectories this year. Michigan State, they had lost 3 games in a row going into that Wisconsin game. Were able to overcome Wisconsin in double overtime. But, I mean, if you watch that game, Michigan State should have won the game several different times. The drop pick was really bad when it went between 2 players' arms. It's been an ugly season for Michigan State. I mean, we saw the press conference after their first loss from Mel Tucker when he said he was a horse bleep football coach. I don't even know if we can say that on here. I'm just not going to risk it. But ever since then, we've seen kind of like a downswing for this team, and the trajectory has been evident. It's not good. They're going to have a worse year this year than they had last year, which, without Kenneth Walker, you think this offense was probably going to take a step back, but not quite like this. And you'd think that the defense would take at least a little bit of an inclination, and it hasn't. So the question is, with Michigan coming off of that win over Penn State, let's take the focus away from Michigan State, away from the game for a second. We're going to go to Davis. Your thoughts on what you saw from Michigan against Penn State, and what might look different, I guess, from a game plan perspective in this game. What do you see Michigan attacking Michigan State in this game differently than they did against Penn State, which was here's the thing with this team. 1 week they can be run heavy, the next week they can be pass heavy, a la Indiana, to Penn State. So curious on what you think about this team and what they're going to roll out against the Michigan State team that has a stronger rush defense and a much worse secondary.
Well, that's exactly what you said and what Josh said earlier. Obviously Michigan State's going to sell out on the run. Penn State gave up 418 some odd yards on the ground against Michigan. That's not going to happen in this game. If it does, I will be shocked, and Michigan will have absolutely floored Michigan State. I look at it as a game of numbers. I know you said to focus more on what Michigan State or what Michigan's going to attack on Michigan State, and that's the secondary. Michigan State ranks number 111 in yards per game through the air allowed. That's horrible. There's only 23 programs in the country that give up more yards per game through the air than Michigan State, and a lot of them are the lower half of FBS programs. J.J. McCarthy, number 1 in completion percentage on the year, and number 15 in yards per attempt. I think it's a game of numbers, but the biggest number is 0-2, and the second biggest number is the point spread. We're talking about the 2020 matchup. They were favored by 24 going into the game. In 2021, they were favored by 4, and in this game, they're favored by 22.5, and it's rising. The numbers are the story of the game, and the history over the last 2 years show the numbers don't necessarily matter. Cade McNamara was not a high yards per game quarterback last year, and he threw for 383. The numbers in this game seemingly never matter, and at the end of the day, all people can talk about right now are the numbers. Michigan State's horrible secondary, but can JJ break 230 passing yards is what he's averaging, but he's the number 1 completion percentage quarterback in the country, number 15 in yards per attempt. Michigan runs the ball. Are they going to be able to do it against a good front 7 from Michigan State? And is Michigan State with arguably the worst secondary certainly in the Big Ten, potentially in Power 5, is Michigan going to be able to throw the ball? And that's where they're going to have to win the game, and that's where they're going to attack. Whether they do it or not is a different story. And as we've seen, the numbers seemingly don't matter in this game.
We'll go to Brock, and we're talking about Vegas, and Davis did kind of mention it in his synopsis there that the line is at 22.5, and most books have it there. 23 is what the consensus is at. So as you mentioned, it is rising, and it's gotten to 23 in the consensus. So it opened at 21.5 in Circa, but a lot of folks had it, or it actually opened at 21 by Circa, but a lot of other books were already at that 21.5, 22.5 mark, and it's out to 23 now already. And I've been following a projection service, just a guy I know who's an odds maker and has a projection, and his projections have Michigan as a 25.5 point favorite. And just to mention, he had Liberty, who was a 10-point dog this week. He had them winning money line, and he had another team that was a bigger underdog winning money line. And so he had a really good weekend. I think he went like 6 or 7-0 against the spread. So I like to use his projections, and he has Michigan as a 25.5 point favorite, giving you some pretty sizable value in terms of projections. Of course, that's not reality. So in the world and in the realm of reality, Brock, Michigan, as let's say they close at 24.5, because that's kind of what it's looking like. It's going to close at based on what I can see, unless there's a huge drive of bets one way or the other, which is kind of unforeseen right now. But let's just pretend it closes at the 24-point mark, 24.5 mark, whatever it may be. Where are you comfortable taking Michigan, and are you comfortable at all taking them with a number above 20? Given what Davis had already told us, which is 100% true, Michigan State's kind of a bit of a cover machine when it comes to playing Michigan.
Right, yeah, and like you guys were already talking about, numbers seem to have no impact on how this game plays out. Sometimes it makes no sense at all, and you'll look up and Michigan State is somehow in the game, even if Michigan's been dominating the entire time. I was thinking about it the other day. I was doing a piece for the OU newspaper, and I was thinking about the spread and what I would take if I were to put money on it. And I don't feel comfortable that Michigan could cover, honestly, even if it's over 20. That's a big spread, and I could see it happening. I could see Michigan just unleashing the run game and Michigan State's secondary kind of falling apart and Michigan ends up winning by 30. But if I had to pick, I'd go on Michigan State to cover, because I just don't feel comfortable with how these matchups have gone in the past. And I mean, if you're Michigan and they can't stop your run game, then I saw a comment earlier. One guy was saying he wants to have J.J. McCarthy throw it deep and unleash the deep ball. But if Michigan State can't stop the run game and you're Michigan, there's no reason to go away from that, because you just ran for 418 yards on Penn State last week. And if Michigan State can't stop it, then there's no point in going away from it. So I could see it going either way. If I had to pick, though, I'd pick Michigan State to cover. I just don't feel comfortable with going anything over 20, just based on how this matchup has been in the past.
All right, we'll go to Libby, our recruiting editor here at Maize Blue Review. Is there anything recruiting-wise to look out for this weekend? Any visitors you can confirm? I know there is, but I'm pretending to be someone who doesn't. So go ahead and tell us what to look out for this weekend recruiting-wise. And then on top of that, are any kids that are coming this weekend who Michigan is battling with Michigan State for in particular that might have a big effect on will this game, I guess, have an effect on their recruitment?
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about this in August about how Penn State and Michigan State were going to be the marquee games for hosting recruits on, unofficials or officials, regardless of Michigan State's record. I mean, if you look at really the Midwest and who's playing this week, I mean, you really have your choice between Michigan or Penn State. And with Penn State having its night out game this past Saturday, I would expect quite a few visitors, especially in this area. I mean, if you talk to in-state kids that are currently going through the recruiting process, they understand this rivalry. They have one side or the other growing up. Their parents do too. Most of them have Michigan and Michigan State offers or are hoping to get one or the other. So this is going to be a really big one in terms of how Michigan sets itself apart in state and essentially the entire Midwest. Michigan State, despite the record, is doing really well with NIL and building relationships with like Brandon Jordan and Mel Tucker and Hazleton. They're really good recruiters. And, for Michigan to can make a convincing win against Penn, like they did against Penn State, I mean, it will only show results. After talking with kids after the Penn State game, they were just in awe with how Michigan beat up a then undefeated program and a then top 10 ranked program. And I can only imagine the sentiment is going to be the same when Michigan, in hindsight, does the same against its in-state rival. A few official visitors are expected to be coming this weekend. We have 2023 Rivals 250 offensive tackle Spencer Fano from Utah. He has a top 4 of Oregon, Utah, BYU, and Michigan. We have 2023 4-star offensive guard DJ Chesser from the Metro Atlanta area. He has a top 5 right now of Michigan, included, as well as like Ole Miss, Auburn, and South Carolina. And then we have 2023 3-star wide receiver Jaron Hamilton from Gainesville, Florida. He has a top 7 out right now, but after reading, doing some research, and the general consensus for him is that Michigan is sort of battling out with Alabama being the leader. Michigan's looking for one more wide receiver commit to pair with Samaj Morgan and Frederick Moore. And then with offensive line, they have 2 commits right now, but they're looking to add at least 2 more with Fano and Chesser coming in, and then a couple more names in the future. So again, a big win can really put Michigan ahead in terms of on the field success. It's just a matter of how the atmosphere and the energy and really the vibes of how this weekend's going to end up shaping out. If they can replicate what happened last week, they're in great position to continue the momentum with less than 2 months before the early signing period. So we'll have more of a list this week, an official list. So be on the lookout for that, and previews and recaps as always.
Shifting gears here, talking back to Michigan State and this weekend's game under the lights at the Big House. We'll talk about some numbers here before we go into buy or sell, just a few numbers to throw at you guys. PFF pass rush grades out Michigan State's pass rush at 77th. Michigan's in the top 10. The defensive expectancy and the efficiency score by Sharp, if you have anybody here who listens or watches or pays attention to Sharp college football, it's basically just a combination of 4 criteria: drive efficiency, explosiveness, play efficiency, and negative drives. And you can look at it offensively and defensively. It's just kind of like a comprehensive way to understand and to, I guess, analyze how it's successful. A good example would be, does anyone raise your hand if you heard that Penn State had a top 10 rush D last week? Thank you. Now put your hand down. Keep them up. Keep them up. Keep them up. Keep them up. Now put your hand down if you read Eyes on the Enemy and it said that their 95th graded rush defense was going to get gashed. Now everyone put your hand down if you read that. Put your hand down because I wrote that and you read it. Because we all read each other's stuff because we support everybody. So anyway, either way, this is a good way to kind of gauge what to expect. It's kind of, I hate going into, well, they've given up the 5th most yards all year. It's not that simple. Did they give up 400 in the first game and they've given up 100 every game since? Like, this is a good way to understand it and get it. And Michigan State's overall defense is 11th in the Big Ten. They're worse than Indiana. Who else looks bad? I mean, Rutgers' defense is 6th, and they're all the way down to 11th. Michigan's is 5th, though. So you start to wonder how, Illinois is 1st, Iowa's 2nd, Ohio State's 3rd, Penn State's 4th, and Michigan's defense is 5th. So, it has its flaws. But regardless, Michigan State down to 11th there. So there's an obvious difference here, right? Like, we're all seeing there's a clear, evident difference between these two teams. That was not true last year. They were both undefeated. And in 2020, that was the 2nd game of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? And we all know, 2020, much of an anomaly year, right? But that was still what it was. In 2019, this was very similar to 2019. Michigan had finally got its quarterback, quote unquote, Shea Patterson. Michigan State was in a downward trend. Michigan was only getting better. But Michigan State and Michigan had split because of the terrible game in 2017. And then Michigan won at MSU in a difficult way in 2018 when everyone thought they should have rolled. So everyone was kind of having the same conversation we're having right now because they're coming off of, again, back-to-back splits. So Michigan had won 2 years ago. Michigan State won last year. We were having the same conversation before that 2019 game when it went split before. So I think we're in a similar situation. I kind of see Michigan just blowing this game out personally. But let's go to Josh, and we're going to start buy or sell with this question. Michigan State's emotions will play a role in this game. And if they do, will it be good or will it be bad? So I want you to buy or sell if they're going to have the emotions over Michigan, similar to Penn State, and then tell me if those emotions are going to be good or bad. Because we've seen it backfire on teams like Penn State, but we've also seen teams use it to beat Michigan, like Michigan State the last 2 years, really.
Yeah, I mean, people make the joke all the time that, this is Michigan State's Super Bowl, right? Like the Michigan game is their, their Ohio State game at the end of November. And I think they do relatively get up for this game. I think, that typically they show a lot of emotion, and and I think that sometimes plays to their detriment when it comes to free yardage and in regards to penalties and things like that. But I will absolutely buy the Michigan coming into the game, or excuse me, Michigan State coming into the game with plenty of emotions. I mean, you're talking about a really bad Michigan State team who's reeling, that's fortunately coming off a victory in double overtime, desperately trying to, get the season righted. And I think, a lot of people would say that if, Michigan State were to beat Michigan, that, the season, no matter what happens from now to the end of the year, it was a success. But I absolutely buy emotions being high, and I do buy it being effective in the game. It's gonna, I think, there's gonna be some 15-yard penalties, and I think emotions are gonna be high on both sides. This is Michigan. Michigan needs this win, and have been thinking about this win since last year. The guys that
do you think this team kind of like lauds itself on like not being that? Like they're so prideful in that they are like not emotional during the game. Like I feel like JJ after the Penn State game last week was like, yeah, they're emotional. They play with their emotions, and kind of like threw them under the bus for doing so. Now, granted, Penn State did some stupid stuff, so he had every right to say that. But do you think this team isn't that? Do you think like they're like, hey, don't bring the emotions into it? Or do you think that this is one of the 2 weeks a year where they're like, hey, bring every emotion you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan is I just think, Michigan has been fairly even keeled when it comes to emotions. They try not to let the moment get too big for them, but at the same time, you could argue that some may suggest that Michigan might not be taking Michigan State as seriously as a Ohio State. So you can also play emotions into that as well. It's tough. It's tough to say. I mean, I think Michigan wins no matter what. I mean, I don't think there's a special recipe there that says, oh, Michigan has got to show emotion in order to beat Michigan State. I think, just the way everything's set up, I mean, Michigan is the better team than Michigan State. But it's always something weird that happens that, no matter who the coach is, whether it's D'Antonio or Tucker, they always get up for Michigan, and not necessarily it's the same either way. I think Michigan just kind of plays its game, and sometimes they try to get too smart when it comes to playing against rivals. But I think this time is different. This time is definitely different. You can hear it after the game. Blake Corum suggesting, oh, it's on to Michigan State. Donovan Edwards saying what he did this week. Even JJ McCarthy, and I met plenty of players. Plenty of players have been talking this week about, the need to win this game. And it's true. I mean, they got to win this game regardless. I mean, if it was any other game on the schedule, I mean, they got to win the game in order to have any hope of getting into the playoffs. So You can have anomalies of 2019 where Michigan just opened up a can. But it's just you these type of games, you just throw out all of the narratives, all of the stats, all of the trends, because every year it proves that something wacky happens that goes against the norm, whether it's for Michigan or against Michigan, that happens in this game. It's just happens. I don't think I've ever seen a normal Michigan State game where Michigan comes in and just takes care of business. I mean, something other than 2019, which again wasn't that normal, but it's just tough to see because there's just so many things. It's just so many things that happen in that game that is not necessarily just normal. So it's tough for me to say, but I definitely think, these guys have been talking about it all week. There's going to be emotions. The emotions are high. I absolutely buy it. And, hopefully Michigan plays smart with their emotions and not give up dumb penalties. I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, there's multiple ways to play with emotion. You can play with emotion, giving up personal fouls, or you can play with emotion and take care of business. So the hope there is that they can take care of business.
And we will find out if they will on Saturday. But until then, we still need to dissect it, discuss it, analyze it, and look at every angle of it, because that's our job. Davis, we're going back to you. You are getting an open mic, which I'm sure I will soon regret. But I know you had some things you wanted to say, so I'm going to let you here, because I'm going to guide you, because I care about you. Make 1 point. I want you to treat this like around the horn. You get to make 1 point.
That's really tough. I get an open mic, but I'm limited to 1 point. That is.
Okay. I'm kidding. You can make a couple.
Not too much. That's not too dangerous. It's a little dangerous, but not too dangerous. I think they're going to beat that. I think they're going to kill Michigan State. I think they're coming in so hot, so ready for this. Last year they got embarrassed, and quite frankly, it turned their season around. Without that loss, I don't know if they go on to beat Ohio State. Just from the way it changed the emotions, changed the locker room. That it was a humongous game for them last season in a loss. This time, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to be a humongous game in a win. They're coming in and they are ready to pounce them. And look at what Donovan Edwards said. They want to give them no mercy. They are fired up. They want to absolutely destroy Michigan State, and quite frankly, I think they're going to do that. Now, we talked about the line being whatever it was, 22, 23. You said the potential is to close at 24.5 or so. I hope they cover. I think they're going to. I think Michigan's going to win 38-13. That I'm going with a score prediction for my open mic. I'm going 38-13.
Okay. All right, Brock. We are going to go back to buy or sell. Do you think Michigan State is going to live and die throwing the deep ball like Indiana did? I think this is going to be Michigan State's strategy. I've thought this for the past week. Michigan has vulnerabilities are in two places defensively. They like to bring a lot of pressure up front, and they're okay sacrificing their back end. And then their linebackers can't do anything for them in pass coverage. If they get Nikai Hill-Green back, which we haven't heard anything about, and if you want to stay updated, michigan.rivals.com, sign up today. But we haven't heard anything about Nikai Hill-Green yet. And until he's back, we don't know what these linebackers are going to do in coverage, because what they've done so far is pretty bad. It's I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but just understand it's bad. Their highest graded linebacker going into the Penn State game in pass coverage was 54. It was Junior Colson, who's 122nd among linebackers qualifying in college football. So in pass coverage, they are rough. So I personally see them kind of going with some open under stuff, maybe some option stuff with the underneath and the overtops. But based on what we saw from Indiana, based on what Bazelak put on tape, which was that even if you can't beat Michigan in coverage, which they did a couple of times, right? We all remember that. But even if you don't, easy it is to draw a flag if you just throw it to the inside shoulder and make them come back. Easy it is. Just run a comeback route and we'll draw the drag and we'll get the pull on the shoulder pad and get the flag. So that's pretty much what Indiana drew up. And momentarily it was working, and they were just kind of doing the under and the over top stuff. They weren't even worrying about the middle, which I think is where they went wrong. Besides the point. Point is, Brock, are you buying or selling Michigan State selling out on the deep ball and selling out on the air game in general against the Michigan defense. That's flaw is really its pass coverage, both over top and just outside the defensive line.
Yeah, I buy it. I completely buy it, and here's why. When you first mentioned those deep balls, my first thought was from the Indiana game where I think it was like 3rd and 13 or something. It was one of Indiana's first drives, and Bazelak was in trouble. He was drifting back, and he basically threw up some prayer to his receiver off his back foot, and the guy caught it, and it set up their first points of the game, if I remember right. And I think that's what Michigan State might have to rely on a little bit in this game is just some deep balls that are a very low percentage chance of being complete. And but DJ Turner and Jamon Green have been doing a great job in coverage as corners. As you mentioned, the linebackers maybe not so much, but I trust the secondary, Turner and Green and Sainer still back there too, to do a good job of containing Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman and those type of guys. So I feel like Michigan State will try and connect on a few deep balls just because that may be the only offense that they can generate. But yeah, I completely buy the fact that might be their only form of offense.
All right, we'll finish with this buy or sell. This won't end the show, but we'll finish the buy or sell segment here with Libby. What do you think about this question here? Michigan will beat Michigan State, but they will not beat Ohio State. And it will continue their streak of not beating both in the same season, which dates back to, I can't remember the year, but it's been a while. It's been at least 2 decades, I think, something close to that. It's been a while. So Michigan will beat Michigan State, but they will not beat Ohio State. Buy or sell?
Sell. If I had an AP vote, it would be Michigan, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama in the playoff. And I've stuck with that since the Alabama loss. So, no, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, going to beat Michigan State, and end up being Big Ten champs and get the number 2 seed in the playoff and face Tennessee.
And
I second that.
Wait, what was that?
Why do you think that? What makes you think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State?
I think Ohio State got exposed a little bit with Iowa. I think their schedule says that they haven't played enough big time games to prove that they're able to withstand an actual top 5 ranked program. I think my opinion of Ohio State will change maybe if they go out to Happy Valley next week and obliterate them on Big Noon kickoff. But I think it's due for Michigan to finally win in Columbus. And if any year to do it, it's now. That's not to say Ohio State is good enough to win, but also I think they are well deserving of a Rose Bowl appearance. So I think that's how it's going to happen in January.
Ohio State's defense, according to Sharp, as far as its total score goes, which again is a combination of drive efficiency, explosiveness, play efficiency, and negative drives. Ohio State's offense is first, and their defense, I think, was third. Michigan's defense is a lot lower than that. It's somewhere around like 20 or 30, but its offense is fifth. So they're both certainly efficient in that realm. Whereas in SP Plus on ESPN, last week, Michigan and Georgia were the only 2 teams with top 10 units in offense, defense, and special teams. That still remains true. But the top 4 all have top 10 units in offense and defense. So we're seeing some parity there. What's up, Davis?
I just want to make a comment on Zach on his comment. I second the fact that Michigan is going to beat both Ohio State and Michigan State. I think they're going to beat Ohio State by 10 points or more as well. But yeah, I think Ohio State's soft. That's okay.
Hey, can I jump in here really quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm 19 years old. Davis is 20. And you want to know how many times Michigan has gone into Columbus and won in our lifetime?
How many times? 0.
0.
Right. I mean,
so
I've hardly seen it.
exactly. So
I have.
I'm not no disrespect to Davis or Zach or anything like that, but I mean, predicting Michigan to go into Columbus and beat the Buckeyes when it hasn't happened since 2000, I don't know. I think it might be a little premature there, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's a bit premature too, but I wasn't going to say anything. All right, let's answer some questions from the comments, and then we will get on our way and let everyone get back to their Sunday nights. I know there's some Sunday night football on. Some of us are fielding fantasy football teams. I lost Brees Holiday, so that stinks. Chris Fields had asked a question, and I was trying to find it. There we go. All right, so Chris Fields said he's pretty pumped. Does both teams having a bye week before the game play a factor? Personally, I don't think it plays a factor because both of them had it. So if anything, it helps both of them. I know that Trevor Keegan in a media availability last week said that it's good for him, good for his body, and really good for his mental health. He said a lot of these guys are so in the grind of waking up, going to practice, going to school, going home, watching film, going to bed, waking up, going to practice, going to school, going home, watching film, and doing it over and over and over and over again for 2 months in a row, that the bye week is beneficial because not only do they get a break physically, but they also get one mentally. So I think it just helps both teams. But, I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody, I don't think. We'll go to this next question. We'll have Josh. You want to answer that one?
How could Michigan get surprised in this game? That's a good question. I don't know. I guess if Michigan State's continued ridiculous luck with the chuck it and F it game, it becomes successful. I think with Thorne to Jaden Reed, I think that could cause Michigan some issues. But we've seen time and time again this year how strong Michigan's defensive back groups are. But man, it's just so tough to kind of picture how Michigan could get surprised in this game, because everything that Michigan State does, Michigan counters so well, and vice versa on the other side of the ball. So, again, it kind of feels like I'm picking on the linebackers a little bit, but I think the linebackers
law so far, it's kind of hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't really, and again, I don't want to say weak link, but it's proven that they have the the thinnest depth. They've shown issues in recent weeks in coverage, so I think Michigan State could exploit that. I just think Penn State's offensive game plan and it was just so bizarre and bad that I don't think we really learned anything. But we'll see. I mean, I think again, I'll reiterate, I don't think Michigan State's going to be able to run the ball in Michigan, not at all. And I think they're going to have to beat Michigan with the pass, and whether it's the long game that they have just insane luck with. I mean, that luck, the Hail Mary, just throw it down the field, completion percentage is ridiculous. I've never seen a team have so much luck, on the 3rd and 4th down, just chucking it and someone coming down with it. It's unbelievable. So it's, again, I mean, maybe I am coming into this too confident, but the way Michigan's been playing, how could you not? And I think that's the only way I think Michigan's going to be able to lose this game, is if that, Thorne just plays off just out of his mind. So, yeah. And I guess the linebackers could be exploitable, I guess. We'll just have to see. I mean, these guys, Michigan State's going to have to get their money's worth from their $95 million man in terms of a game plan to come up and beat Michigan. I mean, they got to call a game of their lives, and they haven't really done that yet with this group. And so we'll see. I mean, again, maybe I am coming in too confident. Maybe, I'm not giving Michigan State some ounce of respect, but they wouldn't do the same for Michigan. So, I mean, it's that's my 2 cents.
Gerald said this year will be Michigan's last big chance to win in Columbus for a while, and I tend to agree, just given how the two teams have recruited, which are polar opposites. All right, we'll close with this. So I went into the power rankings of Sharp Football Analysis, and Michigan is 5th in their power rankings. They've got as I mentioned, 5th best offense, but the defense is 20th. So again, that has a lot to do with the schedule because they've faced the 79th worst offenses in college football, whereas I think defensively it's a little bit different. Or I'm sorry, I messed that up. Offensively, they faced the 79th best defenses, but listen to this, guys. Michigan's defense, this is like telling. Michigan's defense is 120th in schedule. So like the offenses that Michigan has faced, there's only 11 teams who have faced worse offenses this season. I don't have the time to look at them right now, but that'll definitely probably be an eyes on the enemy at some point. And I think that's what continues to like give me eeks about picking Michigan to beat Ohio State this year. I think we definitely have a lot of time between now and then, so that's one thing. But another is just that the numbers are way more in favor of Ohio State right now than Michigan. And we'll put it this way. Right now, Ohio State is a 13-point differential between Michigan and Ohio. There's a 13-point differential right now between Michigan and Ohio State, and that's on a neutral field. So you add in 3 points for home field, and Ohio State would be a 16-point favorite by Sharp. But Michigan State is 70th in this power ranking, whereas Michigan is 5th, and Michigan is exactly 25.5-point favorites according to this metric. That's on a neutral field. So on home field, it is, let me get this exactly right. Yeah, 25.62, and you're supposed to add 3 for home. So then Michigan's a 28.5-point favorite according to Sharp this weekend, which is, again, pretty good projection. So that does it for today's show. And Luke asked about Maryland's offense. Yeah, Maryland's offense just lost Tulia, however the heck you say it. So I think that kind of like hurt their offensive ranking on Sharp. Davis, what's up?
Yeah, if I could say one thing, I want to, if you could throw on Luke's second to last question, the one he posted at 9:29. If you could put that up on the screen for a second.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that comment would be directed towards me. It would definitely be me. The pecking order goes me, Brock, and then the 3 bozos down at the very bottom. So I'm the boss here, basically.
And I do want to say, because I just want to interrupt Davis here because this is far more important. Chris, thank you for the $5. We appreciate that.
Let's go, Chris.
Totally unnecessary, but thank you. That's our very first donation to the podcast, our network. So thank you, Chris. We appreciate you.
Dollars around, baby.
Totally unnecessary, but thank you. We appreciate that. And
thanks, Chris.
Yes, hate week.
Boy, Chris.
Start now. Hate
make
week.
Sure you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Hate weeks.
Oh, yeah.
It's been 2 weeks. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for Rise to the Victors. You guys can listen to this on your audio or watch it back on YouTube thereafter. But make sure you tune in each day at 1 p.m. in between today and Saturday. Dennis Fithian will have his live show, Good Afternoon Michigan Football, every day at 1 p.m. here on our YouTube live, and he has guests lined up throughout the week. I think a couple of us will be on there, but some other external guests. It's late on Sunday, okay? Forgive me. Some external guests as well. So make sure you look out for that. And then on top of that, we've got the recruiting show on Tuesday, Who's Got Next with Zach Libby. We've got the Hail to the Podcast with Josh and I breaking down Michigan State on Thursday. And then we have Sharpening the Edge, which is our betting show on Friday. And do not forget the Daily Show. It happens every day on top of those. So plenty of content coming to you guys on YouTube. Make sure you go to michigan.rivals.com. It's only $9.99 right now for a subscription. So head over there and join us for some inside intel. Join the conversation in the den with an abundance of other Michigan fans who are passionately discussing what was going on in this YouTube comment section on our board nonstop all week. So come join the conversation, michigan.rivals.com. Join us at the Maize Blue Review, and we look forward to talking to you when you get there. For Josh, Davis, Zach, and Brock, I am Brandon Justice. This has been Rise to the Victors, and we will talk to you throughout the week as Michigan prepares to host Michigan State on Saturday at the Big House. Take it easy. Enjoy your week. We'll talk to you soon.